welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I'm going to be talking about the commanders from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. And this is going to be a very open-ended video. It's going to be, I'll probably be hitting on a lot of topics here. I am not going to be talking about the top 10. I'm not going to be talking about what I think are going to be the most popular. At this point, whenever new sets come out, I'm starting to make videos about the commanders where I'm just going to talk about the ones that I think actually are worth talking about. In other words, there's something for me to say. If commanders come out in a set and it's so painfully obvious what you should be doing, well, what is there for me to say about it? You do the thing that it says on the commander and that's it, right? For me, I am going to be talking about some, certainly what I think are going to be some of the most powerful and popular commanders from this set. I'm also going to be talking about commanders that, there are definitely a few here that are super open-ended, maybe also powerful, but the open-endedness, the Atraxa factor that I like to say, I think Atraxa is the most popular commander in the format still because it's so open-ended and there's so many strategies that you can do with it. And that is the case with some of the commanders here. Ultimately, I wasn't super impressed with the commanders from this set. That seems to be a trend lately. For me, I get way more pumped about the 99 cards from sets. That's been the case for a long time now. It's rare that I see commanders that I actually get excited about anymore. That's just me. I don't know. I don't know if I'm alone in that. As usual, we are seeing the trend of, as I say all the time, we're filling the voids, right? We are printing a commander for every scenario. We now have a Ox Tribal commander, if for anyone out there that was looking for that deck. Although, again, that is maybe not necessarily an Ox Tribal commander, but you certainly could do that. We have a Plant Tribal commander. I don't know if we had an actual dedicated Plant Tribal commander. Again, might not actually be necessarily Plant Tribal, but you could do that. We also have a Modal Spell commander because, of course, again, we need a commander for every single scenario imaginable. Every single archetype you might want to build around, you need a commander in the command zone that is going to encourage you and also give you a really nice payoff for doing so, right? I don't love all of that. I'll just say, I don't know if it necessarily makes the commander format worse. It just doesn't interest me at all. There's nothing to talk about. When a commander says, play modal spells in this deck, okay, I wonder is there going to be somebody that does a deck tech for that? I wonder, because of course you're just going to put all the modal spells in there and you're just going to pick all the ones that you personally want to put in there. So I just don't think there's anything to talk about. That's why I won't be talking about commanders like that in this video. I also don't want to be too negative in this video, right? Too much negativity. People don't like that. So I will try to stay positive and talk about the ones that I think are interesting build-arounds. I am going to start out, though, talking about the new Obeka Splitter of Seconds, which I'm sure is getting a ton of buzz. And this is one, again, this falls into a category that, I don't know, I have to come up with a term for, because this is one that, where I see it, I get super excited, and then I do some research and I get a little less excited for a very specific reason. This has happened to me a few times. So 1 black, red, and a blue. So a Grixis commander, just like the original one, Ogre Warlock, 2/5 with Menace. When Obeka Splitter of Seconds deals combat damage to a player, you get that many additional upkeep steps after this phase. Now, of course, this is not entirely new. We do, of course, have Paradox Haze, which you are going to probably want in this deck as a backup. We also have the Doctor. I can't remember which one. There's a red-blue one that gives you an extra upkeep, right? Both of those effects gives you 1 extra upkeep. Probably would be obviously going in this deck. This has the possibility to give you a bunch. Now, of course, you got to get him for combat damage. Should not be hard to do. I mean, your commander's already got Menace. You can give it other forms of evasion. You get that many additional upkeeps is where things are going to get out of hand. And again, this is a card that when I first saw it, I got super excited. I'm like, oh, there's so many neat things you could do here, right? That's the commanders I like to see. And then I thought, I started doing a little bit of research and I'm like, oh, you can just really easily end the game with this. That's the effect I'm talking about, where you see a commander, you get super excited about it. I know a lot of people are, but this to me is a command. This might even be a CDH commander. I'm throwing it out there right now. We got some really powerful colors for CEDH, so that's already going to be enticing. Obviously, your commander being a 2-power will get you 2 extra upkeeps, and of course, those upkeeps will be after this phase, meaning after your combat phase. So you're going to get those 2 upkeeps then I guess you would get your next main phase and then your end step, right? Like it normally would. So they're going to sort of slot in the middle there. So you're going to get a whole bunch of upkeeps before you get your next main phase, which is great because then you can do a whole bunch of stuff. You know, you get all those upkeep triggers. Like say you just have a Phyrexian Arena, right? I have a Phyrexian Arena in play. I get 2 additional upkeeps. I get 2 more card draw, and then I get my next main phase, so I can do stuff with those cards. Like that fits really, really nicely, those extra upkeeps. It, in fact, makes it even better. However, for me, I just think it's way too easy to end the game. I looked up things that trigger on your upkeep. That's what I quickly did a search for, and I didn't even get past the first page. I will throw out one card here, okay? Court of Cunning. 1 blue enchantment. When Court of Cunning enters the battlefield, you become the monarch at the beginning of your upkeep. So we have that upkeep trigger, which is going to trigger on every single upkeep, right? Any number of target players each mill 2 cards. If you're the monarch, each of those players mills 10 cards instead. So if we're the monarch, I mean, if we're on the monarch on our first upkeep, like of course we get one every turn, everyone's going to mill 10 cards. Now, if we're not the monarch, obviously we're getting in for combat damage with our commander, so it's very easy to get it, right? Now, of course, 2 more upkeeps is not going to end the game, but if you can bump your commander's power, and it's very easy to do so, you could just use a giant growth effect. Now my commander is a 5 power. I'm getting, and remember, I've already milled my opponents. I get in, and you don't even need a milling deck. Just this one card. I get in for 5 damage. Now I get 5 additional upkeeps, and all my opponents are going to mill 50 cards, right? And I mean, is it game over? Pretty close, right? I've already milled 60 cards just in one turn. All my opponents, not one person, all those opponents are milling 60 cards. So I guess maybe 1 extra upkeep or 2 extra upkeeps, and I just kill everyone in one turn. And this is kind of a janky card. I'm not janky, but it certainly is not a really powerful card. I'm just milling my opponents, right? That's just the first one I saw where I'm like, oh, you could probably very easily just win the game in a single turn if you got in for enough damage and just mill all your opponents out in a single turn, right? So that is the, you know, whatever, maybe I'll start calling it the Obeka effect, where it's like, oh, this is a really again, the first Obeka was kind of like that too, so maybe I will call it that. A commander that I get really excited about because it has this very unique ability, but then you realize, oh, it's actually really, really powerful, and you could very easily end the game on a single turn. I imagine, again, I'm sure people have done a lot of research on this and have found other ways that they could just straight up end the game on one single turn by having their commander get in for like 7-8 damage and just get however many additional upkeeps, right? So unfortunate. I think it's a really interesting design, but just maybe too powerful. Might even be a CEDH commander. And again, exact same scenario, the Obeka effect, Kbal, Profiteering, Mayor. This might be, my guess is that either of these two might be the most popular from the set. That's my guess. I think they're the most powerful from the set for sure. And again, this is one that very interesting, unique ability that we haven't really seen anymore, that there's a lot you could build around with, but also it's so powerful. 1 black and a white human advisor 2/4. Whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them, create a tap token that's a copy of it. This ability triggers only once each turn. So of course, it triggers only once each turn, right? So that means if your opponent has a Smothering Tithe, they get a treasure token on, you know, some other opponent's turn, you will get one as well. It will be tapped, but still pretty good, right? However, it is each of them. So that means if your opponent has an Avenger of Zendikar come down and creates 30 plant tokens, you will get all of those as well. If your opponent has a Dockside Extortionist come down and creates 30 treasure tokens, you will get all of those as well. Only triggers once each turn? That's okay. 30 treasure tokens in a single turn is pretty good, right? Also though, like that wasn't enough, whenever 1 or more tokens enter the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So this is 1 or more. So those 30 treasure tokens that you are getting, you're only going to get 1 life drain, but it is very easy, and especially without even building around this, the amount of tokens that are being created in the format right now, it is very easy to get that trigger on every single turn, at least once every single turn, maybe multiple times a turn. And so you have an ability here, the first ability that is really powerful, really easy to build around, really open-ended. You don't have to build around it at all because your commander can just sit there. Just like the original Kbal, which your opponents are going to be casting spells anyway. So he just sits there and just gains you life and drains your opponents. This is very similar, where your opponents are going to have tokens enter the battlefield. I'm trying to think, do I have a deck that doesn't make tokens? I doubt it. I mean, maybe, but I doubt it. And I'm only talking about, you know, the like little tokens, the treasure tokens. I mean, treasure tokens are powerful, but one treasure token is not a big deal. I have a deck, my Tishana deck, where I'm creating token copies of my creatures. My opponent will get a token copy of the creature that I'm creating when I do that. So there are even some bigger scenarios, right? And then you also have the win con stapled on it as well. You don't even have to do this that much. Again, you could build around this where I have my generous gift and I mean, the removal you would play in a deck like this already. I'm going to get an elephant too, great. All the things that you would normally do in a deck, you'll just incidentally get those tokens and your commander will incidentally just drain all your opponents and kill them. You could do a life gain theme here easily as well because it's so easy to get life gain triggers in this deck. You'll be getting life gain triggers on everyone's turn. So again, you could just make a black-white good stuff deck with this and very easily win the game, I think. That's how good this commander is. My guess, it's going to be the most popular from the set. Maybe Obeka, but this is my pick. Another one that, maybe could be in the running for most popular from the set is Kellen the Kid. It's in good colors. Again, the colors matter here as well. This is a Bant commander, white, blue, and a green human fairy rogue 3/3 flying lifelink. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, you may cast a permanent spell with equal or lesser mana value from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So if there's one thing commander players love, it's casting stuff for free. And if there's another thing that commander players love, it's putting lands into play. Both of those things are what commander players love doing. Just that cascading effect. Man, Magic players in general just love Cascade. And that's essentially what this commander is doing. And obviously it will also work with Cascade. It'll work with a lot of things. So this commander will be a really popular one. It is open-ended, which is great. Again, this is the Attracts effect where you can do so much here. You can cast spells from anywhere other than your hand. So I can do Suspend, I can do Foretell, obviously the new plot mechanic, Flashback from my graveyard. I mean, there's lots of options here, obviously. Cascade will work. Just Impulse Draw, although these colors don't do Impulse Draw great, but you still could do it. You could throw one of my favorite cards in here, Oracle's Vault. There's a great card that is casting stuff from exile and possibly doing it for free as well. This would be a great fit for a card like that. There's so much you can do here in great colors. It's doing everything that people like. I mean, geez, the more I talk about it, maybe this will be the most popular commander from the set. Could be, certainly could be. I mean, obviously Adventures is another one that works here, which obviously Kellen, that's sort of his thing, right? Certainly going to be one of the most popular from the set without question. I like it because it is open-ended and there's a lot you can do here. And again, this to me could very much be a Method 2 commander where I just really wanted to make a Suspend deck or I really wanted to make a Foretell deck. Now I have a commander that gives me some nice value there. But because it is so easy to work around, it is going to be a really popular commander for sure. Similarly with the open-ended, but a little less, there's not as much of a powerful outcome here. Wily Duke, Atin Hero, 1 white, green, Human Ranger 4/2 with Vigilance. When Wily Duke becomes tapped, you gain 1 life and draw a card. So again, very open-ended. It's gaining life and drawing a card, which every deck wants to do, of course. I mean, I don't love the whenever this thing happens, you get to draw a card. Of course, we do see that a lot. However, this is kind of interesting. It is, I guess I kind of like the tap theme. Maybe that's why I'm talking about this guy. I like that it has Vigilance, so you can't just attack with your commander and gain a life and draw a card. You actually have to figure out other ways to do it. Again, if you're one of those people that has always wanted to do the tapping theme, I mean, I guess Convoke works here. There's lots of different ways you can do it. Vehicles works here. Maybe people are thinking of doing a white-green vehicles deck with this guy. You don't want to just build a deck where I have a commander that I want to tap so I can draw a card every turn. Then this just turns into a Phyrexian Arena or something. Like, that's not super great. You want more than that, right? So yeah, you could do a vehicles theme, but then you go down the rabbit hole of, okay, now I got to find other creatures that fit in that theme, which I can throw out a lot of examples, obviously. That's why this is a commander that, for me, I wouldn't say I was super excited about. I'm not going to go after it myself, but I certainly could build a really interesting deck with this guy. I've done the tapping, untapping theme is one that has just sort of been in my head. I always have cards like Glare of Subdual is obviously a slam dunk in the deck. Cards like that. I don't know why I've always been attracted to that theme. So, Order the White Clay. There's a creature with an untap ability. So that's something else you could do in the deck, right? Because I'm tapping all my stuff. I put creatures in the deck that have untap abilities, right? So just throwing out some Stony Brook Schoolmaster, right? I have lots of ideas for stuff like that because, again, I don't know. That theme has always been a theme that I've been attracted to, and this is a great commander. If I was still to do that, I'm not going to, but if I was still to do that, I mean, I already have a deck that's doing the tapping with Lulu. I also have 2 white-green decks, so a lot of reasons why I'm not, but if I'm one of those guys that I've been sitting around always wanted to make a deck like that, now I have a great commander for it. All right, Gem Lightfoot Sky Explorer. This is certainly one that I'm sure is not getting a ton of buzz, but I think it's pretty interesting. Again, it has that open-ended feel, right? 2 white and a blue Human Scout 3/3 Flying Vigilance at the beginning of your end step. If you haven't cast a spell from your hand this turn, draw a card. Now, likely people will say Vega the Watcher is just a better commander for this strategy because, of course, that says whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand to draw a card, right? Even though that seems not exactly the same, it's probably similar because with your Gem Lightfoot, likely that's what you'll be doing. Again, you'll be doing the Suspend, the Foretell, because you don't want to cast a spell from your hand. There's a lot of ways to go with this, though, right? Again, a lot of people might be thinking, okay, well, Vega's just better for that strategy. Yeah, but there's a lot of different things you can do here. If you haven't cast a spell from your hand, covers more than just that. You can, I mean, there's a bunch. First of all, you can do, I just cast everything on everyone else's turn, right? You can do Flash Tribal, right? And again, there are other commanders that do that, but this is a great one. I guess this is going in the 99 of a lot of those decks. There's a huge advantage to play a land and pass, right? A very control-y theme. If you just have a white-blue deck that has a very control-y theme, this would be a great commander for that. This is also, funny enough, a really funny fit for the deck that I just threw together, which will be coming out on my channel, right away probably, where I just don't cast spells at all. I came up with that idea. I mean, I didn't come up with it. I actually saw someone else talking about it in another format, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to try and make a deck where you don't cast stuff in Commander? I made that deck. That deck is coming up probably next week. And this commander would work great in there. And white-blue colors are actually good colors for that. So that would be, again, that's why I kind of like commanders like this. It's like, okay, it's very easy for me to get the I don't cast spells from my hand this turn, draw a card trigger because I don't cast spells at all. So funny enough, we got a commander where you get an actual payoff from not casting spells. And this could certainly be it. All right, Karvik the Punisher. I think this one's been getting a little bit of buzz. 1 black, human warlock, 3/3. Whenever you commit a crime, exile up to 1 target black card from your graveyard and copy it. You may cast the copy if you do lose 2 life. And as I've said, and maybe I need to stop saying it, committing a crime is super easy. I know that sounds bad. People keep quoting me. It is in the format, certainly. It is really easy to just target your opponent's stuff, target your opponents, even just cards in their graveyard. It's super easy to do that, right? And this commander, in fact, I'll be talking about both of them. I think, I mean, I didn't scour entirely, but these 2 commanders that I'll be talking about here might be the only cards that don't have this triggers only once each turn, which of course is really, really important because you can, like I said, very easy to do so, right? I mean, you could probably very easily do a black Spellslinger theme here, right? And in fact, has a very Toshiro Umezawa feel, doesn't it? I mean, it's very similar. A Toshiro Umezawa deck is going to work. And man, you could probably almost swap out commanders here, couldn't you? Because of course, what a Toshiro Umezawa deck is doing is I'm casting lots of removal. Because when a creature an opponent controls dies, I get a flashback from my graveyard. So I can really go off there. And obviously, having your opponent's creatures die is obviously going to be targeting them. You're going to be committing a crime. So you could really go off there as well. And that's probably why the buzz about this. I mean, you're losing the 2 life. Thank goodness they put that on there. So you do have to be a little careful, but black's pretty good at gaining life too. So it would be very easy for you to throw in, anything that is just going to gain a bunch of life. I wonder if black can do that, right? So might want to throw some life gain in here for when you're going off. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, it's very easy to commit a crime. The only stipulation here is the life loss. You can do this as many times as you want, right? And you're not paying for the copy at all. Oh boy. Yeah, I'm gonna bump this one up a bit. This one might be up there with the first 3 I talked about as one of the most popular from the set, I think, for sure. I really like Marchesa, Dealer of Death, though. This to me, I mean, again, people really like casting stuff for free, but this one I like a lot better because, again, it has that open-ended feel where there's a lot more I can do with it. Blue, black, and a red human rogue 3/4. Whenever you commit a crime, you may pay 1. If you do, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So if I can commit a crime 3 times on a turn. And again, you're really going to want to do, for any of these decks, do the research for, is there a land I can tap that will target my opponent's creatures? An artifact that I can tap. how many ways can I, without paying mana, right? That's what you want to do with both of those commanders. How many ways, some easy ways to throw in my deck where I can just repeatedly target my opponent's creatures without paying any mana, especially here because you have to pay 1 mana. And man, if I can commit 3 crimes in a single turn, because this doesn't trigger only once each turn, essentially pay 3 mana, draw 3 cards, but also I get to shoot stuff in my graveyard, which of course can be extra good as well. There's so many themes that you can do here. And again, this might be, I mean, geez, you could throw this in the 99 of decks too. You could throw this in the 99 of, say, a Kess deck or something where you're probably targeting your opponent's lots and maybe you want stuff in your graveyard, you know, stuff like that. So this one, even though, I mean, it is 3 colors, so for that reason alone, it's more open-ended. I think this one, again, feels like a very Method 2 commander where I had this strategy in Grixis colors where I wanted to be throwing stuff in my graveyard, and this seems like a great commander for that. Roxanne Starfall Savant. This is a little goofy. I had a guy say that this felt like it was supposed to be in an unset, and they ended up putting it in this set instead. I actually think it's an interesting build around, though. 3 red, green, cat, druid, 4/3. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, create a tapped colorless artifact token named Meteorite with, when it enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to any target and taps to add 1 mana of any color. And whenever you tap an artifact token for mana, add 1 mana of any type that artifact token produced. So, of course, this goes in every Sfella deck if you have one. These commanders obviously probably go in each other's decks. Artifact token means it works with treasures. You could definitely do treasures here. There's a lot you could do here. This is it's just a very funny open-ended commander. You're creating these tokens that are dealing damage, so you're throwing non-combat damage around. You could build around that theme. You're having artifact tokens enter the battlefield, which in Gruul colors, you know, you could find some interesting ways to do that. It is a pretty neat commander. This is definitely, I would say the next 3 are all the ones that, for me, if you said, hey, you got to build a deck tech with one of the commanders from Outlaws of Thunder Junction, this is one of the ones that I would go after and find some interesting ways to build it. All right, Vraska the Silencer, 1 black and a green, Gorgon Assassin, 3/3 with Death Touch. Whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, you may pay 1. If you do, return that card to the battlefield tapped under your control. It's a treasure artifact with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color, and loses all other card types. And of course, that is what makes this such an interesting build around. As I was doing the spoiler video for this, I was like, man, this is actually a really interesting commander. There is a lot you can do here. Obviously, your opponent's creatures dying all the time is already going to be a thing. You can put your own removal in here. Of course, Golgari Colors does that easy enough. The really interesting thing here is that you are turning your opponent's creatures into, they're no longer creatures, which is super, super interesting. Again, I'll throw out a few ideas. Donating creatures could work. Fateful Handoff, that would be a really neat card where you can give your opponent a creature that you want to get back. Obviously, you can give it to them, draw some cards, kill it, get it right back. I also like the idea of I turn my opponent's artifacts into creatures, like a Xenic Poltergeist. That's a slam dunk in this deck because now I can just start turning my opponent's Soul Ring into a creature. It dies. I get this trigger. It comes back into play under my control. You can do stuff like that as well. So really neat build around here, I think. The most interesting commander from this set, I think, is Taiwen, Perfect Shot. I was not sure about this one. I was like, I wonder if people are going to go after this or not. It is drawing cards, so there is that. It is a really interesting commander. I mean, man, remember when Boros used to be sort of laughed at? Every set now, Boros gets at least 1 or 2 new really interesting commanders. Certainly isn't hurting anymore. Red and a white, Human Mercenary, 2/3. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to a creature equal to that creature's toughness, draw a card. So you have to do damage equal to its toughness. Those 2 numbers have to be exactly the same, right? However, you can pay X and tap if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to a permanent or player this turn. It deals that much damage plus X instead. So that is a way to get exactly the number you're looking for. And of course, the flavor here is fantastic, right? We have like a sniper, something like that, right? So the card draw is, you know, the flavor there is really great. The card draw would be like the bounty, I imagine, something like that. Really, really fantastic flavor. And of course, really, really interesting build around. I was on the Discord with a couple of my patrons because I had a longtime patron saying, I want to build this guy. And I was throwing out ideas. I had another patron throwing out ideas. We were going on for a while, throwing out all these interesting ideas you could go with this commander. There's a bunch. It's really interesting, really unique, and again, really open-ended, right? There's lots of different ways you can do this. I know a lot of people are thinking, okay, I'm just going to fill my deck with lightning bolts and stuff like that and just look for the creature. You know, I'll hit the 3 toughness creature with my lightning bolt, or if there's a 4 toughness creature, I can throw an extra 1 damage in with my commander, right? Sure, but there's a lot of other ways to go with it. I'll throw out Aether Flash. That's a personal favorite of mine. And of course, your opponents are probably not going to play their 2 toughness creatures, but you can, right? This works on your creatures as well. You can make your creatures indestructible because all this cares about is the non-combat damage that is dealt. So if my creatures are indestructible, they'll still take the damage. I'll still get the card draw, but they will survive. It is very easy for me to have, let's say, a whole bunch of 1/1 tokens in play, cast a Flawless Maneuver. Then I have a Caltrops in play. Caltrops is non-combat damage. And whenever I attack with those 1/1 creatures, they're all going to take a damage. I'll draw a ton of cards. And of course, they'll survive because they're indestructible. So that's a really good theme to build around, right? Rather than relying on my opponents to have the right creatures in play in order for me to get the card draw, I'll just build around them myself. And I'll just make my creatures indestructible. Or I'll regenerate them. Or, there's lots of ways to make it so that your creatures aren't dying all the time. I really like the attacky theme. Power Stone Minefield will work there. Light Minefield will work there, right? Those are all sources that are dealing damage to creatures, non-combat damage. So there's actually a lot you could build around here. This is a really super interesting commander. We did indeed get some pretty neat commanders from this set. Again, ultimately, I would say, if I was giving a letter grade, I would say it was like a C-, the commanders from this set. But we certainly did get a few. I talked about 10 commanders from this set that are certainly going to be interesting build-arounds, and some of them are going to be very popular in the format. For sure, how popular, only time will tell, of course. You guys let me know what your favorite commanders are from this set, which ones you're super excited about building around that possibly I didn't mention in this video. That is it for today, though, and thanks for tuning in.